What's going on? Another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home here at fakepigskin.com. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me, joining me for a very special Angle of Pursuit today, breaking down the 2020 Masters. I know it's November. It's early or late, depending on how you want to look at it. Read his work over at fakepigskin.com, doing all the fantasy golf, the college DFS, and so much other good stuff for us. It's Bobby Adcock. What's up, Bobby?
Kyle, thank you for having me on. Excited to do this. We get the Masters in November. We get two Masters in the golf season. And even though I'm not going to see the sun for 6 months because I live in Michigan and it's dark, pitch black at 6 o'clock every night, I am excited to be here.
For those that aren't are looking to do DraftKings and DFS for the Masters, go check out the Swipe Right Sportz podcast. And I will tweet that out from my profile. I'll tweet that out from the Angle of Pursuit profile. Bobby and I just went down all of the names that we are targeting for DraftKings. And obviously, if you play FanDuel or somewhere else, you can kind of take some of the information and some of the names that we talked about. But this is going to be a betting preview. This is going to be looking at the outrights, the top 10s, the top 20s, maybe miss the cut, maybe some other cool stuff. I don't know. We'll see where this conversation goes. But Bobby, before we get into everything, let's start at the top of the board and let me know, are you betting the favorites? Are you betting Bryson at 7.5 to 1? Are you betting at Dustin Johnson at 8.5 to 1? I have odds checker up to look at, kind of see if I can find some discrepancies anywhere. But if you're betting the Masters, are you diving in this range, or are you going, I'm not paying that short of a price, let me go look a little bit deeper?
Well, we talked about this a little bit on our DK show, but I think if you're bullish on a winner, then you have to kind of just go in on it. And I think we both talked about Bryson and DJ at the top, and even though they are the top two, they're still you're getting 7.5 or 8.5 to 1. You can put a $50 bet out there and still have a nice little payday there. So
sure,
I don't mind that at all. I think normally, if you've ever listened to Kyle and I talk about DK or any Vegas odds stuff for golf tournaments, just because I like the value and the payout, I always am trying to go in that 25 to say 40 to 1 range and trying to pile up on those and make a bunch of $15, $20 bets on those guys. I actually did that for, I believe it was the PGA. And we talked about this. It was kind of a joke because every guy that was in that range, like 25 to 1 to 40, I put like 15, 20 bucks on. I was like, if the winner comes from here, I'm going to make money no matter what. But the only guy I didn't was Kyle Morikawa. So that was the worst part. And I'm sure I'll do something similar in this tournament as well. What about you?
So typically, like you mentioned, I like to be in that kind of 20 to 45 or 50 range. Basically, since the restart, outside of, I think, 2 tournaments, when I think Bryson dusted the field in Connecticut way back in April or May, whenever that was, June. And then I think there was Jim, what's his name? The rando guy that was like 100 and something to 1. Outside of the Jim Herman, there we go. Got there. Those two, outside of those two guys, it's typically in that range. And even when the US Open winner, Bryson, came in that 20 something to 1 range, which was, he was kind of down. It was a little, so typically I'm trying to find myself, but as you mentioned, if you have a strong feeling about Bryson, even if you're not getting the numbers that maybe some other people got back in, when you were betting this way back in February, if you like him, and because we would bet on Sunday an NFL game, and if you told me that I could get the Chiefs at 8 to 1, or if I could get the Seahawks at 8 to 1, like I'd be falling all over myself to bet that. Granted, it's not a 1-to-1 matchup, so it's a little bit different. But if you have a strong feeling, if you believe in a certain golfer, even if it's at the top, because they will win this. And for something like the Masters, I'm a lot more interested in Jon Rahm and Dustin Johnson, in in Bryson, as this is traditionally a tournament won by the best of the best. And that is where the value comes. So if we are making investments in this range, is it DJ for you?
Yeah, I think the top two guys are the ones that I would focus on. We talked about this on my pod, but I think it's fair to reiterate. I think it's a very bomber style type profile that you want at this course. If you go back and look at past history, all the guys can have success, but typically the guys like Bubba, Tiger in his heyday, who could outdrive everyone, they have a lot of success here. And one of the reasons is the layout isn't as penalizing off the tee as maybe like a U.S. Open. We talked about, we always see guys hitting critical shots off that pine straw, and they're still able to control the ball. So even though you can't spray it everywhere and go crazy, it just doesn't penalize people as much as, say, like U.S. Open rough. So I think if you're looking at profiles for guys who can have a lot of success and win, especially, it is guys who can it's the big dogs, I think.
Yep. So if we expand our profile and we look a little bit farther down the board, kind of, we'll cut it off at say 30-1. Every book's going to be a little bit different. I am using DraftKings for these numbers. But if we're looking at the Patrick Reed, Hideki Matsuyama, Jason Day, Brooks, at 17, I think is interesting. Even Xander at 16, I know a lot of people will find themselves going to. If you're not betting at the very top of the board, is there a name in that range that you're saying I can find a little extra value, go here and be really happy with a bet?
Well, there's a few, and my obsession with Tommy Fleetwood and Tony Finau. And I've made like this pact with myself that I'm convinced they're going to win. It never happens, but when it does, I'm going to be there in the winner's circle with them. So probably not Fleetwood this time. I just don't think. I think there is starting to be a narrative with him that he doesn't play well over here. I can't really explain that, but you touched on it in our earlier discussion, and I'm starting to kind of come around to it. With Finau, I'm still liking him in that range. I think he's played some of his best golf since the return of the sport. He was, I think, T8 at the PGA and T4 at the U.S. Open. I might have reversed those, but anyway, he's been playing great. And wouldn't it be perfect for him to get his first win on the PGA Tour that isn't the Puerto Rico tour? Wouldn't it be if it was the Masters?
Yeah,
perfect. So I like him. I also think a guy who fits the profile that we've talked about well is Matthew Wolff at 45-1.
Yep. So for Finau, if you like him, and I'm with you, Bobby. I'll give him a little dig just because outside of the Puerto Rico Open, he has had issues closing. But this is a guy who's played this course before and played it extremely well, even when his ankle was basically broken.
Removed.
And still was able to come inside the top 10. If you like him and you have access to the FanDuel Sportsbook or to PointsBet, get down there while you can, because you're getting 32 or 33 instead of the 28-1, which most sports books are hanging, which I think is a kind of nice way. And obviously, depending on what state you live in and what you have access to, and if you're looking at overseas or whatever, looking around for some of these guys, especially outside of the elite options, you can find some decent numbers. And you may have to bet a couple places, but if it means you're getting 4, 5, 6 points better on your odds, that makes a guy so much more compelling. Who, Finau, if he was 25, I would probably be out at that point. But at 28, 30, 32, I'm very, very interested in him kind of finally doing it. As you mentioned, let's go into that 30 to 100 range, because I think there's a bunch of names in here that are incredibly appealing, including that Matthew Wolff, who, depending on where you look, as low as 33, as high as 40. I know it's his first time, and that's always a little concerning, especially when you're betting outrights. But this is a guy who traditionally has played really well in the biggest tournaments, has popped at spots where Bryson DeChambeau has played really well. I feel like there's been a few tournaments where both these guys are kind of in that final group or final chunk, and they end up being in that top 3, top 5 range come the end of the tournament. So if you like Bryson like I do, and you think he has a legit shot, betting someone like Matthew Wolff, who I think has a similar skill set, has a chance to do really well here at 4 times the odds, I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, like we talked about, I mean, he fits the profile, right? He can crush the ball a mile too. So I think if his T game is sharp and he's staying in between the lines there, I think he's a good profile guy to fit it. And speaking of DraftKings Sportsbook, Kyle, I was going to ask you if you could write some letters to my state legislature and get them to pass this, because I cannot. It's just annoying because it doesn't make any sense. I can do DraftKings fantasy, but I can't do sportsbook, but I can drive to a casino 20 minutes away and place a bet. I'm like, well, can we get this passed? What's holding us up? I have no idea, but Michigan's always slow with this stuff, whatever.
Yeah,
and also, I mean, if you're going to make me stay inside, can I at least bet on more stuff? Come on.
Yeah. I live in California where I think you guys might even be closer than we are to actually being able to make wagers. It was going to be on the ballot, and we were going to be able to bet on it or vote on it. And then they decided for some reason that they didn't want to do that and actually pushed it back. So it's not going to be on the ballot again for like 3 more years. So it's the beautiful part of living here. Luckily, I'm about an hour and a half away from Lake Tahoe. So if I need to make any wagers, I can hop in the car, drive up, make my bets, and come back.
Okay.
Outside of Matthew Wolf,
yep.
Is there any names in, say, the 30 to 50, 30 to 80, even we can go to 100 because that's the range we're in. Who else sticks out to you as a guy do you think legitimately could win this tournament and has the odds that would compel you, even if it's 10, 15, 20 bucks to step up the window and make a bet?
Well, unfortunately, not Tiger Woods. He's not one of them. But I would say the names that I typically gravitate towards, I think for good reason, that are playing well. They've been playing sharp since the return of golf and have good recent form, are guys like Hideki Matsuyama. I think he's at 30-1 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Bubba Watson, we talk about a lot on my pod, and I think some good points just to reiterate here. Great course history. I think is important here, and can crush the ball at the tee. And so he's always just had kind of almost like a Jordan Spieth. Even when he's not playing great and during certain seasons, he seems to have good success here. So Bubba's a guy, I think he's at 33-1 that I really like. And other guys that I talked about, and I want to make the points here as well, is I just think they play well consistently in majors and have a chance to win. One of them has won here before and has been playing pretty good, is Adam Scott. I think he's at 50-1. And the guy I told you I'm all over in DK, who's talked about publicly that he's in this for major championships. That's what his career is now, is Justin Rose. Can he win one? I don't know, but he has a great course history here. I think it was something like 13 to 14 cuts made. I think 5 of those are top 10s, and I think he has a couple of runner-ups too. So he knows his course well, had a really good track record, and I think he's at 65-ish to 1.
Yeah, I got him at 66, and I'm very happy to be there. As we've talked about many a time on your pod, my relationship with Justin Rose is a wild swing of ups and downs. But he's actually been in really good form, as you mentioned, is a golfer who's had a ton of success at Augusta and is somebody that is incredibly compelling. And I want to go back to Bubba because Bubba, as you mentioned, can play well at this course even when he's not playing well, but he's coming in playing well. He seems to have figured something out from a mental perspective. Obviously, it's got to be strange for any professional golfer who is so used to a certain rhythm where they're on the road and they're going to these places and they're doing this and then on to the next tournament. And it's a constant, like, you get your mind set to do that and then you don't get to do that for a while. And it's got to be a little bit of a challenge. And obviously, we've all experienced a little bit of that while the COVID situation has been going on. But Bubba seems to be playing well, seems to be in a really good headspace. And for somebody that you can get anywhere from 28 to 35, I think is a phenomenal bet and somebody I've already got in on as well. So I have 3 total bets. 4 because I had to go in. We'll talk first round leaders here in a bit, but I do have one of those. But I have Bubba, and I have Justin Rose. I'm probably going to make at least one more in this range. Matthew Wolf is somebody that I'm very interested in at his price. Hideki Matsuyama is somebody that I'm very interested in at his price. Can we get in on Scotty Scheffler at 60, 66? Like, I know, like, before he got COVID, he was playing amazing. And since returning, it hasn't got better, but it seems like he's each week since returning has gotten a little better, a little better. Maybe he's a guy that we look as maybe a top 10 bet, top 20 bet instead of an outright. But there's something that I'm interested in there, especially at his number.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy that, whether he wins or not, we can see that he has these crazy stretches of golf where he's just piling up birdies. And this is, of course, I think another thing that we should mention is the weather's going to be a bit of a factor. Mm-hmm. And we don't know necessarily what the impact will be, but there's going to be rain. Some days it might be worse. I think Thursday they said could be storms, so it could be delays. But the rest of it's supposed to be kind of like spotty rain. That can sometimes help scoring conditions and softening up the green. So someone like Scheffler, I don't know why we didn't really talk about him on my pod, but he's a guy that he's shown he can really break from a path and put up. He can just get hot, basically.
Yeah.
I think he's intriguing at his number, and I think he has the upside to win if I'm looking in that range. So I don't mind that bet at all. And I did want to mention with Bubba, like you said, playing really well. Stats are way up. 13th on tour in ball striking right now this season, and 9th in strokes gains approach. So again, those are pretty elite stats right now for him, and they're a big jump from what he's been probably like pre-COVID, let's say. So you're right. He's playing really well.
Yeah, and I heard an interesting quote from, I believe, Mark Immelman over on the CBS golf pod. But basically, we'll see how the weather dictates the greens, as you mentioned. If it rains a little bit, maybe they're a little softer. But some golfers tend to be a power past the hole, come back to it. But as you mentioned, even when we were talking about Tiger on your podcast, this is definitely a be below the hole, hit it up to it, not past it. Right. And Bubba's a really good putter in terms of getting it there and having it trickle in rather than crushing it and then trying to come back or whatever. So he, his putting could be in a really nice spot, especially at this tournament. I think he makes a ton of sense. Two guys that I'm looking at are even a little bit longer than that. Cam Smith, you can get him as high as 90 at Will Hill and I believe FanDuel. He's down to 65, 66, which is, I think, a little aggressive. I don't know that I could get to him at that range, but I think if he's in the 80s, I'm definitely interested. And our guy, Jason Kokrak, I mean, if you can get him, let's see, where he is currently 100-1 at PointsBet. So if you have PointsBet access, I like that a lot. A guy who's been performing really, really well, but seems to be kind of in that 75, 80, maybe 85 range in most spots. And I think that's an interesting spot. And once again, he's a guy that you maybe want to go a little more top 10, top 20 type range, but at 80-1, I'm willing to take a shot there at a guy who's been playing really well. Just won, I think, 2 tournaments ago, and his game seems to be in a really nice spot.
Yeah, I've heard in a few different spots this week. I think Kokrak is becoming kind of that sexy sleeper pick, so it's probably going to work out because everyone's. But I agree with it, and I think it makes sense because he's always been a very good driver of the ball, good ball striker. That's never been an issue. It's always been putting, and right now currently ranks 3rd on in strokes gained putting on the season. So that's what keeps him. That's what's held him back most of his career, and he's figuring that out a little bit and getting better and better. And that's when he can compete and contend in some of these golf tournaments now. He has that type of game. So I agree with kind of being in on him this week is a sleeper pick or a longer odds guy to be a smart play.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm probably going to keep my focus in that range. But if we're looking at a little bit more of a long shot, a guy maybe say outside the top one at 100-1, is there a name or two that you may be willing to throw a dart and say, even if it's just $5 at the opportunity of having a big payday? Is there a name that pops out to you?
There's always a few names, Kyle. I love to take shots. Look, I'm going to talk myself into Francesco Molinari at some point. It's inevitable. I really loved the way he kind of rose up in his career and became this elite golfer. And we all know the story about kind of the Masters last year. And he's talked about it publicly and said he's kind of excited to get back here and just kind of get some closure on it. So he's played in 2 tournaments stateside so far. He missed the cut in his first one out, and last week was T15 at Houston. So he's a guy who I think is worth throw a $10 bet out on, maybe a first round leader. Who knows? But I think the guys that have played really well and are like improving players, maybe that they're on their way up. Guys like Sungjae Im, I think Abraham Answer makes a little bit of sense in that range. Maybe some veterans who have had good success here is a guy like Matt Kuchar, 4 top 10s in 8 appearances, in his last 8 appearances, and just finished outside the top 10 last year at a T12. So I think for like a top 10 or something like that, for a safe floor, maybe he gets one more good performance from Kuchar. I think he might hold the belt currently for best player to never win a major. I'm not so sure. He stole that from Lee Westwood. But I think Kuchar kind of intrigues me a little bit there. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I don't know if I can get there with him. There's too many other players and we talked about a little bit in DK. It's like, and this course is unique in that way in terms of guys that maybe don't necessarily play well year round, come to Augusta, have that familiarity, know where to put the ball, and especially someone like Kuchar who, I know where I need to put it. I know how to play each hole. I'm not going to be overthinking it too much. Tend to play better, tend to pop. So, like, as you mentioned, a top 10, a top 20 might make a lot more sense. And outright, I'm not going there. The one name that is interesting to me is Sebastian Munoz. A guy that we've seen pop more. He's more of a swing season guy, but I feel like is kind of working towards ascending, and heard a quote that he's actually played Augusta in November. So I think that's a little interesting and from a guy who, a lot of people are going to be, they know the course, they know the setup, they know all that stuff, but they've never played it this time of the year. So I am curious to see if it gets a little strange, if he could be somebody that all of a sudden is popping and, making an impact in a place where he's played before. You mentioned first round leaders. I think it's worthwhile to dive into. And a player that I've already invested in is Mr. Augusta himself, Jordan Spieth, first round leader. I got it at 40-1. I'm looking to see where he's currently sitting. Where are we at? He's 45 over at DraftKings. So I don't know that Jordan has the game to hold it up for 4 days, especially when you're talking about winning the whole tournament. But I could see him having a really nice start to the Masters. Everybody getting really excited about, here's Jordan Spieth again. And then him spending day 2 through day 3 and day 4 kind of falling back and finishing top 35 or something. What say you? Anyone else in that, in that first round leader category that you're like, that could make sense. I could find myself going there.
Yeah. So, and I think kind of just to mention this again, I mean, course history matters here. This is the one major that the course doesn't change. And the guys who've had success here and have good track records here, there's something weird about how they get here, even if maybe they're not playing well. That's why a guy like Tiger Woods, I think for a first round leader bet, that's when it actually starts to make sense. Like I go, I don't think this guy's going to win, but can he have some magical round? Yeah, I could. Of course he could. So, so he's getting that price range now, and I think it's 40-1 for him. Yeah, I wouldn't mind Tiger first round leader bet, and also it'd just be awesome to see. So it'd be great to cheer for. Yeah. And then a guy we've already talked about, I think, who can also just have really crazy rounds and shown that he can pile up birdies and shoot, 62, is a guy like Scotty Scheffler. I think he can make sense, although I don't know if he has a ton of history here, but I just like the way he can kind of get hot and he gets on a roll. I think he fits a good profile as like a first round leader bet.
Yeah, I think there's a few names in that 30 to 50 range that make a lot of sense. Obviously, Spieth is there, Scheffler is there, Justin Rose, who we talked a little bit about on the DK show, how we're in on him, could make a ton of sense there. Tiger's in that range, Bubba's in that range. Like, I think if you really like a bunch of names that are in that range, that would be an interesting area to maybe throw a couple $5 bets in and see what you can pull. As I mentioned, someone like Sebastian Munoz, someone like Siwoo Kim. If we're going, I like to look into the triple digits because I feel like you can get in on some of these names that maybe you don't expect them to carry over for 4 days. But if you can get them for one day and it happens to be that first round, you find a way to hit a nice number. Your boy Bernd Wiesberger, 100-1 first round leader. Dylan Fratelli, who I was talking about on DK, 100-1. There's some interesting options, kind of, if you want to get real aggressive, or 90-1 with Lanto.
Yeah, and I think I've seen this guy 80-1 right now, but a guy who's, again, great track record here, played here a ton, playing well right now, and has kind of, adjusted on something where he's kind of playing a little bit better golf than he has recently, is Zach Johnson. 6 straight cuts made on tour just recently, T8 at the U.S. Open. Stats all up for him too, 9 of 15 cuts made. And he won here, of course, here in 2007. So I think he fits the profile as an 80-1 first round leader. Sure, why not?
Yep. I kind of like Lee Westwood in that vein too. 66-1 for a first round leader. But I feel like a guy that's playing better, obviously has a ton of history at Augusta. Do I think he can win the tournament? Probably not, but I think he'll play better than maybe people expect. And I think he could have a really good first round. And I'm going to be really curious. I want to see like the tee times, because like Tiger could make a lot more sense if I know he's going out in the afternoon versus the early wave. There's some ways to kind of play that. I also like getting in on the younger guys that are early, because then they're not looking at the scoreboard and going, oh crap, I got to shoot, this to kind of get myself going. And then they put a lot of extra pressure, where if they go out really early, especially playing only a couple guys, they can put up a good number and not worry about it.
Yeah, and there's also kind of the weirder, even crazier longer shots, but guys that we've seen that have had success, like weird success. Again, guys who they get to this place and they like the atmosphere, they love the tradition of it. Who knows what it is, but like Fred Couples and Bernard Langer, like we've seen them not even like recently have really good like first Thursday or Fridays, and they get into the weekend and it kind of catches up to them a little bit. But we've seen them have really good success for being at their age. Like they can still they know how to play this course. Yep.
And a comfort factor combined with being fresh, like those guys will fade as the week. Even Phil Mickelson's starting to get into that group. Like as 4 days go, it's a lot of golf and it gets tiring. But for one day, they have the skills and they've won enough over their career that they could earn that. Let's talk some top 20s, top 40s. Obviously, we don't love everyone to be able to win the tournament, but if you look at a top 10 bet, we've talked about top 10 Tony at plus 550 for a top 5. What is he? Plus 250 for a top 10. I like that a lot. And, obviously it's not as sexy as a 33-1. But if you're double, triple, quadrupling your money and you get places, I think you have to, like, if you really like a golfer, like that's a great way. Cause like, especially when you're betting, like when I was betting golf consistently, it's a great way to not get a goose egg and a shutout at the end of the weekend. You can kind of build your bankroll and give yourself some outs. So even if you don't hit the outright, which obviously the outright is what everybody wants, but you could find a way to keep from going to zero and not being able to bet the next week.
Yeah, and in that kind of same vein, I think I kind of like some of the similar guys we talked about. I think for course history purposes, I think Kuchar makes sense, and he's also getting some pretty solid value when you go to top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Justin Rose, Kokrak, and Sungjae Im, you're getting kind of that 11 to 14-ish to 1 value for a top 10. I like those guys, that value there a lot as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at some of these numbers. They're definitely incredibly appealing. Cameron Smith's in that range too. Like Matthew Fitzpatrick, I think, is another guy who I don't know that he'll ever win this tournament, but like I feel like he always lingers, always is around, and a top 10, a top 20 on him could make a ton of sense. Okay, Bobby, we've done it. We've gone through the names. We've talked about our favorite options. I need 2 things from you.
Yeah.
I need your winner for the 2020 Masters.
Yeah.
And I need your 2020 Masters best bet. And if they're the same thing, lay it on me. But whatever, just let me know where your head's at.
All right. I'm going to make the same points I made on our pod because I think they're just they're important and the reason behind the pick. But I think the bet to win is going to be Dustin Johnson.
Okay.
6 straight finishes right now, T6 or better on tour. He won Northern Trust, course history 8 of 9, and cuts made 4 straight top 10s. Again, that right profile of the style of golf he plays. He's a bomber, so I think Dustin Johnson. I think what is it, 8.5 to 1? It's the second guy. He's my pick to win. And obviously he's the number 1 player in the world, so it's not going on a huge limb, but he hasn't gotten a Masters yet. I think he has a PGA and a U.S. Open. I think he's a guy. He's one of those guys. He's probably going to get that career Grand Slam at some point. He's that good. So
yeah,
I think he's my pick to win. Best bet. Well, before maybe this is the best bet. I talked about this earlier on the pod because I said, did anyone see that John Rahm hole-in-one practice? Did you watch it yet?
I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to as soon as we get off. Tell everybody what he did.
So it's totally ridiculous. He was literally attempting to do this. It wasn't a mistake, like he hit a bad shot. There's a par 3 with a pond in between it, and he tried to skip the ball across the pond and get it up on the green. Did so successfully, and it rolled. It got on the green probably 100 feet away from the pin, and it took this crazy path and rolled all the way into the hole in a big sweeping curve. And I was like, okay, the golf gods aren't going to let you play good. You're now done for the week. You got your success. People are playing golf their entire lives and never hit a hole in one, and you just skipped it across the pond. So it's just karma. It's science, Kyle. And as you know, over the last few months, we're scientific geniuses in this country. So
100%.
So it can't happen. He's out. And so here's the bet. Here's the bet. Where is this? All right. The miss and make cut odds. I looked at those. Rahm missed the cut plus 475. It's science. There you go. There you go. That's it.
I love it. Honestly, I think I would be interested in potentially betting Rahm to win or Rahm to miss the cut. I feel like he either does amazing and wins this thing and wears a green jacket at the end of the day, or as you mentioned, got his luck early, gets out of here, out of Dodge, and it ends up having a really garbage weekend and doesn't end up playing. So I like that. And as we talked about it with College Game Day there, maybe we see John Rahm in his Arizona State jersey on College Game Day because he missed the cut. I don't hate it. And at that number, like at plus 475, like Dustin Johnson, even at he's 6 to 1 to miss the cut. Like we both like him and think he's playing really well, but he's also one of those guys that when he doesn't play amazing, completely ejects and goes 20 over. Yeah. So like if you want to hedge your bet a little bit or take a gamble on a 6 to 1 to miss the cut, like I don't think it's crazy.
Yeah, and it happens every week, right? I mean, there's going to be whatever the 5 or 6 guys who are favored. One of them is probably going to miss the cut. It's part of it. So take your shot with one, and you probably get a good payday if it happens.
Yep. All right.
Your turn.
So, you mentioned the John Rahm plus 475. A few other names to not make the cut that I like. Tiger Woods at 2 to 1. I hate to do it to you, but Gary Woodland at plus 120 to miss the cut. And Xander Schauffele, I feel like has those rounds where things just go horribly wrong, and usually 3 of the 4 he's great, and if he makes the cut, then he's phenomenal. But like at 4-1, I don't hate taking a shot there. I think he's another guy that I think could easily win this thing. But also, if he misses the cut, I wouldn't be shocked. Like if you wanted to bet Rom, Xander, and DJ to miss the cut, and my guess is you'll get one of those because there's always one person that misses the cut that you're just like mind blown. As for my best bets, I Bryson DeChambeau is winning this golf tournament. And I probably won't bet him because I'm an idiot, but I think at 7.5, it's hard for me to get there. But I think in terms of form, in terms of what he does well, I think he could absolutely dominate this tournament. And my best bet is Bubba Watson, top 5 at 6-1. I think that makes a ton of sense. I have Bubba to win the tournament. I think he has the goods. My goal is to get a handful of players that I think could be in that conversation come Sunday afternoon as I roll into football. And hopefully one of them ends up winning, cash that ticket, and then I can blow it all betting terrible games in football. But I think Bubba is in a great spot here, great form, and he's my best bet.
Yeah, no, nothing wrong with Bubba. Total agreement on him. And I'll say this, like if Bryson does just kind of pull this off, I mean, we talked a little about my podcast, but like, what are the odds are there odds about winning back-to-back majors? Like, I mean, it's hard to win back-to-back golf tournaments. So
yeah,
I think like, I remember we talked about this with the PGA, or I think it was the US Open. You said, can Kyle Morikawa win back-to-back majors? And I was like, well, my head like says absolutely not, but
yeah,
he is. There's no rules anymore. All these guys are so good. So it's like I keep saying, like, well, no, it's not a long shot. But I will say, if Bryson pulls this off and he pulls it off in any sort of fashion, like in the U.S. Open, it's just damn impressive.
Yeah. I think the entire golf community is either wants Bryson to win and completely break golf, or Bryson to lose, so everyone can point at him and be like, see, you didn't have it all figured out, Bryson. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people that are kind of in between there. But I will be very curious if he wins this and dusts the field and has a US Open like performance, if we're not talking about heading into 2021. Oh, everyone has to use the same golf ball, or this rule change or that rule change, or we're doing this now, and to see how that might get the golf elite, in a ruckus, in a get them all going. All right, Bobby, this was a lot of fun. Please tell everybody where they can check out your podcast, where they can follow you on Twitter, read all your good stuff. Give them all the info.
So follow on Twitter or even on Instagram at SportsPod Hookup. For any podcast stuff, you can follow at Real Bobby Adcock on Twitter for all the content that I do on FakePigskin.com. Right now, I was doing golf more week to week, but I kind of put that aside because I have to focus on my main meat and potatoes during the fall is college football DFS. I just have a lot of fun with it, but there's a little more preparation that goes into it. But I appreciate it. I do usually a post and a pod every single week, breaking down every game. And I have a blast, Kyle. Are you playing that week to week?
I'm not doing golf. I mean, I'm not doing college football. I haven't gotten there. I have dived in a handful of times, and my research typically starts and ends with your article, and it's done well by me. So if you are playing college football DFS and you're not reading Bobby's article each and every week, you need to be doing that. And then when college football goes away and it's back to golf, he gives you the names to target there. Obviously, we've been doing some shows with the bigger tournaments, so make sure you check that out if you are an average DFS golf player, and check out all of our stuff over at Fake Pigskin. There's a lot of quality content going up there each and every day. But Bobby, thank you so much for joining me. It was a blast. Make sure you check out Bobby's podcast. I will link it from my Twitter feed, from the AOP Twitter feed. We had a lot of fun over there getting you set. And I am Thursday through Sunday. Don't talk to me. Don't do anything. I'll have all the screens going. I'll have Masters golf. I'll have college football. I'll have NFL on Sunday. I'm very excited for the next 4 days. Thank you so much, Bobby. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Kyle. Good.